All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the WGSN-DB Going Solo Veterans Corner. I'm your host, retired Army First Sergeant Paul Holbert, and we want to thank you for joining us this evening. Remember, our show is designed to showcase veterans, their experiences, their careers, and what they're doing in their lives now. So we'll get to tonight's guest in just a moment, but before we get started, I want to take a moment to thank our two wonderful sponsors of our show, both supporting this veterans broadcast. First, we have Quest Jewelers from Merrifield, Virginia. And I tell you folks, and I tell you every show, if you want something for that special someone, whether it's custom made or just a beautiful piece of jewelry, you can contact Peter Wantain at Quest Jewelers in Merrifield, and they will help you find what you're looking for. And remember, Christmas is coming up, so keep that in mind. I also want to thank our other wonderful sponsor, Nationwide IT Services. NIS, located in Fairfax, Virginia, is a service-disabled veteran-owned small business. CK Park and his wonderful crew there are designed to meet all of your business needs, whether it's program management, IT, web services, training, whatever you may need for your business. CK and his crew can help you get it. So look them up. Give them a call, and you see their number there on the screen, and they will be more than happy to assist you. So let's meet tonight's guest. Yeah, I want you to meet Mack Sigman. Mack is a 20-year retired Navy commander who graduated from Tulane University and also the Naval War College. I don't want to say too much about Mack because I want to talk to him a little bit about his military experience. And in fact, he's got kind of an interesting transition he did from one job in the military to the other, and I'll let him share that with us. So, Mack, welcome to the show, and thank you for being on.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for having me on. Yeah, I didn't have what most folks would consider a normal career. As I was getting ready to graduate from Tulane, I was originally going to go to flight school, but my girlfriend at the time decided she didn't want me to fly. That was when Nimitz had its big accident back in '81. And so at the last minute, I did the unthinkable. I called the detailer and said, I don't want to fly. I don't want flight school. I'm going to go surface Navy. And they said, nobody does that. I go, well, I am. I said, okay, what do you want to do? I said, I'm not sure, but I know what I don't want. I don't want an aircraft carrier. I don't want engineering, and I don't want Norfolk. So I ended up on an aircraft carrier in Norfolk in engineering.
Of course.
And to make matters even more fun, when the chief engineer that ran the engineering department found out I used to work in the offshore oil industry as a welder, he goes, you worked for Brown and Root? I'm going to put you in repair division, where I was in charge of all the high pressure welders and sheet metal workers and owned the largest floating sewage system in the world. And I thought, this is great. I just went to college for 4 years, so I wouldn't be welding. And so ended up doing that. It was fun. It was a challenging job. And I was dumb enough not to know the things that I'm not supposed to be able to do. When we had a couple of boiler problems, and the chief engineer said, here's the manual. Can you do this? We had a superheater tube sheet leak and also a superheater support tube that needed to be replaced. I looked at the manual, understood the process and procedure, and said, yeah, we can do this. So ended up doing it, and later on found out that those kind of repairs are only authorized by the one shipyard in Philadelphia. And, now everything's got to get tested. And, luckily enough, everything turned out okay. All the repairs were satisfactory. And it was, I ended up, I didn't like the job at first, but ended up liking it. We got to do a few more things back in, March of '83, when the HMS Ambuscade missed a turn and collided with the Dale. We got to do the repair work on that while underway, and a few other notable repairs. The downside of the carrier is, I guess I did my job too well. I got extended. So my 18-month tour ended up going to a 30-month tour, and then I was extended a second time. So it ended up, my 18-month first tour was close to 4 years. So when it came time to go do my second tour, at this point, all my peers are rotating out and going to Navy postgraduate school or things like that. I was already behind because I needed to do my second division officer tours. And as much as I liked the steam plant, they were old, they were dangerous, and I decided I wanted to go get into gas turbines. Bruins class were relatively new at the time, so opted for gas turbine engineering. I was main propulsion assistant on the USS Briscoe, which was one of the best ships on the waterfront at the time, and then got sidelined because we also were the lead ship in a class problem that our shafts and our reduction gears ended up being broken. So a couple of deployments on it, but we spent about half my tour tied up to the pier doing reduction gear overhauls. And anybody with a Navy background knows that if you break the reduction gears, your career is over. You're fired.
Well, you also, aside from your ship duty, I think you spent some time at Defense Information Systems Agency as well, didn't you? So you didn't spend all your time tied to the ship while you were in the Navy.
No, I spent 15 and a half years total at sea and 4.5 years onshore. I really only did one shore tour, and that was my last tour before I retired.
Yeah, I
It
mean,
turned out.
I'll go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say, it turned out I like sea duty. So.
Well, it's funny too, because, of course, me being in the Army, never had any sea duty, but I just thought it was always amazing that by the time I retired, I'd actually spent 13 years of my 21 outside the country, in other countries and other places. So when you look at it, like you guys in the Navy, I have a brother-in-law that was a career Marine. He spent a lot of time on fleet duty at sea. So it's kind of amazing to see how much time, a lot of veterans actually spend either outside the country or at sea or somewhere else.
Yeah, it wasn't until my wife and I added it up. I think it was our 7th anniversary, and because I was at sea so much, we'd only spent a year together out of the 7. So after Briscoe, I was looking at doing engineering duty officer. They didn't have any open billets, and the detailer said, "Well, you can transition from the CEC." And I go, "I don't know what that is." They go, "Oh, that's Seabees." And so,
oh gosh,
yeah, I spent 2 years with the big green machine, which then the same detailer turned around and said, "Oh, you committed career suicide. Nobody goes to the Seabees unless you're fired or whatever." So did pretty good there. 2 deployments with the Seabees. And again, it was supposed to be short tour, but I missed the part where it said Naval Mobile Construction Battalion. So literally, we got married, and 7 days later, I was on a plane to Sigonella for the next year.
Oh, yeah.
After the Seabees, I went to department head school and was chief engineer on the Haler, which was the oddball boat. It was the very last of the Spruance class. It was literally built with leftover parts from the Spruance, the Ticonderoga, and the Kidd class.
Oh, wow.
It was originally slated to be a DHH because the Soviets had built the Moskva, which was a warship up front, helicopter carrier back aft. And somebody in Congress said, "Ooh, they have one. We got to have one." And it was construction was well underway before somebody went, the Soviets have that because their small boys don't carry their own helos. all of ours do. They carry one, if not two. So they scrapped it and said, what do we do now? And they said, we'll build another spruance with leftover parts. And so when you go through gas turbine school, they teach, it's like this on a spruance, it's like this on a Ticonderoga, but Haler has this. Haler was a complete one-off ship, and just from a logistics and maintenance perspective, a royal nightmare. After that, my second department head tour, I was the N4 material and logistics officer for an amphibious squadron. And this is where my career took an abrupt right turn. I had gotten to a point, even though I originally didn't like engineering, didn't want to do it, found I was good at it. I enjoyed it. And when I was with the amphibious squadron, I had bought a home computer, a screaming fast 386 SX with, I think, 4 meg of RAM or something ridiculous. And we got a new Commodore. And the Commodore Heisig came in and said, when I was on Blue Ridge, we had a LAN. I want a LAN. When I was on Blue Ridge, we had email. I want email. And I went, I had gotten tagged as the ADP officer because I was the only one in the staff that owned a home computer. And so it fell on me. And I said, I don't even know what a LAN or email is. And to date this is well before AOL started up.
Mm-hmm.
CompuServe is brand new at this point. And so I started playing with something called Windows NT because I read an article, if you bought the beta, you'd get the production copy for free. So I bought the betas for $20 and figured out how to make it work and how to make them talk to each other. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I didn't like circuits, didn't like electrical engineering, and really didn't like computer science when I was in college. They made me take Fortran 101 with punch cards and all that. And I swore I'd never do anything with computers. And then I found myself being responsible for this. And so
So that was kind of your weird transition from engineering into the world of IT, right?
Correct. It successfully deployed. It was the Navy's first Windows-based networking system afloat. Went live for Mark 283, which was the Saipan battle group, and Mu 22 was our Marine element. We were the senior naval component commanders over in the Adriatic, and wildly successful. And even though the folks at Surfland that approved our proposal had laughed at it, they told me Novell and Unix was the future, and anything else was just a flash in the pan, but they let us try it anyway. Those same guys ended up moving out to Pack Fleet, repackaging what we did, and that's where IT-21 came from the Navy.
So you made this this transition from one job to another, but what was it that was there anything in particular that came about that told you it was time to retire and move on to another career?
A couple of things. I had, after shifting from a waterfront engineer to being the IT guy, the detailer said, we need to put you in a joint beltway tour. So they sent me up to DISA. I had never heard of DISA before that, but they said, no, trust us, it's good. And in the Navy, how you can tell the detailers they're about to screw you over is when they say, trust me. So I went to DISA, ended up working for a gentleman by the name of Admiral Gauss and Dr. Perry. I was actually Admiral Gauss's aide for a couple of years, for about a year, and then moved over and took over a small program supporting the Joint Staff called the Global Combat Support System, the logistics counterpart to the Global Command and Control System. when I took it over, it was about a 5-page PowerPoint concept, and we were making good progress with it. The detailer called me up, and at this point, I'd been at DISA for maybe about 18 months. I was getting ready to return to the fleet. And the detailer called up and said, "Congratulations, you screened for command. You're going to get your own ship. Give us a couple of months to work the slate out, and we'll let you know what ship you're going to." So now I'm one happy camper. A couple hours later, the good doctors at Bethesda Naval Hospital called me up and said, "You need to come up here and report in for limited duty." I go, "What do you mean limited duty?" Apparently the neck injury I had been complaining about for 4 or 5 years, which was treated with Motrin, hydrate, and change your socks. It actually proved to be a severely blown out disc at C4, C5. And they said, "No, you're not going back to sea. You're going on limited duty."
Yeah.
So DISA convinced Bethesda that, look, don't make him drive from Fairfax to Bethesda every day. He's at his desk job here. He can stay. There'll be limited duty, but TAD back to DISA. It's kind of a backroom, smoke-filled handshake type deal.
Yeah.
So after the surgery to repair the first problems in the neck, I was on limited duty. That ran for about 18 months. And so as I was getting ready to come off limited duty, I called the detailer and said, "Okay, what are my options?" He goes, What do you mean options? You're my horse meat," I think was his exact words. I go, I don't know what you mean by that." He goes, "Look, you're 18 months over rotation in a beltway joint tour. You're on a prime billet and you're a problem. We can't move you because you're on limited duty. So you're at the top of my problem child list, which I have to brief out every week. So, and the top of my problem child list matches equally with the top of my shitty jobs list." And it goes, you're going to defense attaché job." I said, "I'll be nice. I'll let you pick a stand." And I go, "What do you mean pick a stand?" It goes, "Uzbekistan, Afghanistan, Tajikistan, doesn't matter.
Wow.
You're going as a naval attaché to a stand, 2 years unaccompanied." And I go, "That's not what I want." He goes, "What are you going to do? You're at the 18-year point. You're a year and a half from retirement. What are you going to do? Quit? You're horse meat." So I called the doctors back up and said, "Can I go to Uzbekistan?" And they said, "Absolutely not. You're coming off limited duty. It requires you to be within 50 miles of a military treatment facility." I said, "Detailers are cutting me orders for Uzbekistan as we speak." But Bethesda was quicker and put me back on limited duty.
Yeah.
So came up to the point where I got within a year of my 20, and I put in my papers because I could have stayed in and just waited for a higher tenure and be forced out. Because in the surface Navy, you either have command at sea as a commander, or you're done. It's just one of those have to do type things. So I put my papers in. Detailer called me a couple days later and said, "I've got your papers. You're in the next fiscal year. So don't expect orders till the fiscal year changes or we get funding." And then a week later, my orders came in for retirement. And they actually said, "Retire from limited duty," which you're not supposed to be able to do. And he said, "Oh, don't worry, we'll fix that later." But that got me off of his problem list and kept me from going to Uzbekistan. So,
well, I tell you what, Mac, though, I want to talk about, we're going to take a short break real quick. When we come back, I want to talk about what you're doing now, because I know that you're a Microsoft certified systems engineer and you've been working in IT since you retire. So we're going to continue on and talk a little bit about that right after the break. So for those of you watching, we'll be right back after a break where you can find out about our sponsors. All right. Welcome back. You've been watching the WGSN-DB Going Solo Veterans Corner. And I'm your host, Paul Holbert, and we are talking with our guest tonight, retired Navy Commander Mack Sigman. So, Mack, I know before the break you were telling us, you had an injury that kind of actually forced your retirement from the Navy at that point. But, you talked about that transition you made into the world of IT while you were in the Navy. And I understand that, you've continued that on now. And, I don't mind sharing with our audience. I know you work for Nationwide IT Services, one of our wonderful sponsors. And I have to tell you, I mean, the company does an excellent job of working with veterans and hiring veterans. And you're one of those veterans who works for the company. So tell us what you're doing there. Now, I think you're the senior SharePoint architect, right? Is that
Senior, it's really kind of hard to define. I do a little bit of everything. I guess if you,
especially with names the way they are today, right?
yeah, I solve problems, and I make customers happy. I guess you could say I'm the senior SharePoint Office 365 architect or SME or whichever. I wear many hats. Problem or a challenge, I solve it, my team solves it, and so it's fun. It keeps me busy, and so
Does it? Well, here's the other question: does it keep you out of trouble?
for the most part, yes. You have to define trouble.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just like I tell my wife too, because, I work full time as well. And I've been an adjunct professor for one of the local colleges for about the last 20 years. And people ask me, say, well, how do you do all that? I said, well, it just keeps me off the street. And that's one way to look at it.
Yeah, between my regular full-time job there for about 12 years, I got very involved with the Microsoft and specifically the SharePoint community, which was the community is a little different than a lot of the other IT fields. By day we're all competing with each other, and then in the evening we get together at user groups or free events like SharePoint Saturday and share all our secrets. It's probably one of the most collaborative communities in the IT field. If you look at like powerusers.microsoft.com, which is Microsoft's officially supported site for it, there's probably 500,000 people globally. And if you ask a question, we help you. And so I originally was one of the founding members of a group called the Federal and Department of Defense SharePoint User Group. And then when the gentleman that was running it retired, I took it over. And so month, and then a few years down the road, there was another user group, the Women in SharePoint, which is an offshoot of the Women in Technology group. And I was on their board. They had said, gee, you made FedSpec successful. We want you to tell us, all your secrets, avoid the same mistakes you made. I go, I don't think I made that many, but okay. And we realized we're competing for the same sponsors, the same speakers. And I said, this is kind of stupid. Why don't we just combine forces? So we merged Women in SharePoint DC chapter with FedSpug. And surprisingly enough, when we made that announcement, our membership jumped by about 40%. I guess getting all the nerd guys and nerd girls together proved to be a successful match. And we went from maybe 300 users combined when we merged to when I stepped down from running the show, we were at about 1,500. We were the largest in-person user group of its nature in the country, and it was a lot of fun. But as we grew bigger and had to overcome some logistics, we ended up including the Loudoun County SharePoint user group underneath us, and so now we've got a third coming from Northern Virginia, a third from DC, a third from Maryland, and trying to find a convenient location for everybody proved impossible. And so we went to 2 meetings a month, one in Chevy Chase at Microsoft, and then in Reston at the Microsoft office there, which we ran it like that for about 3 years, twice a month. And the other thing that made us a little different is we didn't do sponsors. The sponsors, at least within the user group, wanted to do product pitches. We didn't want to do that, so we were a self-funded user group, self-supporting.
Well, it sounds like it. I was going to say, it sounds like that you have really continued on in the IT world in your current career. What do you tell us a little bit about your family?
Married for 34 years. I always get the number wrong. To my lovely wife Leslie, which was goes back to my Navy days. She's a local to the Tidewater area. She's from Portsmouth, Virginia. Okay. And with me staying on ships, it became a lot easier because I'd call the detailer from Norfolk. 2 things that absolutely nobody in the Navy ever asked for. But from our viewpoint, her family and all her friends are there. So if I'm going to support system. So we spent the majority of our career in the Norfolk area before coming up to DC. We have 2 children. Oldest son is 34, an accountant, graduated from Radford University. And our youngest, who's 24, is a few months into her doing a 1-year residency at the VA in Baltimore. She just graduated from University of New England.
Okay. Yeah, so it looks like we may have lost Mac for just a moment there. It looks like he froze up and may have lost his connection. But Mac, I know Mac was talking about his transition from the Navy into the private sector, and it seems like that happens quite a bit to the veterans in the military, and as you make a transition, you never know where you're going to end up. You start working in one thing and you end up moving somewhere else, and the military has a habit of putting you in somewhere where you're not really sure you're going to really either like it or fit in or even enjoy what you're doing. But a lot of times you don't have any choice, and sounds like Mac was into that part of the time. It's a shame, though, because I know a lot of the veterans that I have talked to were in a similar situation that Mac was dealing with, in that an injury kind of forced the end to his service, especially for someone that was on a successful end of his career and about ready to take command of his own ship. So it's a shame to hear that. And I kind of hate that we lost him. But I still want to take this moment to thank him. We're going to touch back with Mac and close the loop with him. But I want to just take this moment again to thank him for coming on, whether he's able to listen or not. I want to thank him for taking the time to come on to our show this evening. For someone that spent his first career in the military and is now working for a successful veteran-owned business, servicing customers all over the United States, and trying to enjoy the rest of his life. It sounds like his kids are on a good pathway, and we wish he and his family well. Mac, if you can hear this, or if you get to watch the replay, I'm really sorry we lost you. We wish you the best, and I'm sure I'll be in touch with you again, hopefully here in the near future. So for our audience out there, one thing I do want to bring up tonight before we close it out is our veterans information for this evening. Veterans benefits for spouses of veterans, the healthcare, education, training, and employment information that is available to you spouses and family members of veterans who have served the country. You can go to the VA website right there on your screen, www.va.gov/family member benefits. Take a look there because there are a lot of programs available. There are a lot of things there available to family members of veterans who have served. So it's one thing you really need to take a look at because there are a lot of things they can do for you. So for our audience last night, I'm sorry for our audience tonight. I'm sorry we did lose our guest, but we want to thank you for joining us. You have been watching the WGSN-DB Going Solo Veterans Corner with your host, Paul Holbert. And for those of our veterans out there, we want to thank you for your service. And we hope that you are getting a chance to enjoy your best life. And we hope that you will continue to watch the show. So thank you. I will say this. For our next show, it's going to be a replay of one of our earlier shows. We're going to have a replay of our 99-year-old World War II veteran, Pete Anastasi. And we hope that you will join it and watch that show because Pete is a wonderful man. He's a sweet old veteran. World War II can still fit into his World War II uniform. So you got to tune in and watch the show. And for those of you that may have seen it before, just one thing very quickly. The broadcast is due to air on Veterans Day that evening, November 11th, and Pete actually turns 100 years old right after that. So, there he is. It looks like, well, I tell you what, Mac, we're kind of almost out of time. So I was just thanking the audience for tuning in and thanking you for being on. But if you're able to, there is one other thing I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask you to see, because we are running out of time, but since you were able to make it back on, I am going to ask you, if you would, if there was one other thought that you could share with our audience, to share with either the other veterans or just the audience in general, from your experience, what would that thought be?
There is nothing that you can't do. One of my old COs used to put it best when he'd say, this needs to get done, and I would try and argue, no, like Scotty on Star Trek, no, you just can't do it. He goes, is it you can't do it? Because if that's the case, fine, you're fired and I'll find somebody who can. Or is it you don't want to do it? And again, fine, you're fired and I'll find somebody who does want to do it. There's no such thing as impossible. If you just decide you're going to do it, set a goal and go for it.
Okay.
I apologize for the glitch. My government-run computer decided to go base over Apex.
That's okay, Mac. I'm glad you made it back so we could get your final thoughts. And I do want to thank you very much for taking the time to come on the show this evening. And we hope to talk to you again soon.
Okay. I appreciate you having me, and thank you.
All right. And for our audience tonight, as I was saying, please tune in to our next show, November 11th, for a replay of our previous guest, 99-year-old World War II veteran Pete Anastasi, who turns 100 that same week. So we're hoping that you will tune in. Thank you for joining us tonight. And veterans, thank you for your service, and we hope to see you on our next show.